Alrighty, so today is Wednesday, which means it's time to do a News of the Week episode, and I don't think anybody should be surprised that there is more news to talk about in this last week alone now that the June international break is over, and now we don't really need to kind of focus on the headlines of how the US is going to look for the World Cup based on the Nations League and also the friendlies that is happening, and also the other international friendly game or some games that decide who is going to grab these last couple of spots of the World Cup that's going to be happening in Qatar in November. But instead, we have a lot of transfer rumors to talk about, and we'll begin with the one that was completed yesterday, and it was a rumor that is pretty much kind of been the storyline around MLS, and that of course is the Columbus Crew signing Colombian striker Cucho Hernandez from Watford for a club record $10 million. And actually, let me just put a D here on the Watford there. I don't want to disrespect their name by misspelling it. But yeah, I mean, the Columbus Crew has signed a player that, you would say that he is a Premier League player, but then you realize that Watford got relegated last season. And, I know that seems to be a lot of hype around this kid because a lot of people said that he is a very promising striker and could really light up in MLS. But here's the thing. He only scored 5 goals last season with Watford in the Premier League. And yes, I know they got relegated, and it's tough to score a goal if you're a striker when you're on a team that got relegated and did not do very well last season. But, yeah, I guess this is maybe just a sign of English team decided to kind of demand a lot to basically sell their player. I mean, they're always known for teams to pay much more than the market price in order to get a player away from their club, and it seems like the Crew are willing to take that gamble, and that they better hope that this of course will work out, because $10 million is a lot of money. And if there's one thing I know about MLS club when they spend big amount of money, I mean, it's good to see that happen, because that's kind of a thing we didn't see maybe about 5 or even 10 years down the line. And this trend really kind of started with Atlanta United when they were splashing out cash left and right. But here's the problem. When Atlanta United decided to do that, a lot of those players that they pay like $10 to $15 million has become a flop. In fact, when you look at some of the biggest transfer fees that teams have paid in order to get a player from overseas, it hasn't always worked out well. So yeah, we'll see whether this is, of course, will work out. And there's no doubt that this is clearly a replacement for June Intl, and that they hope that this is going to be the number 9 to solve the big question that this Crew team has heading into the season. I mean, they have a lot of issues so far when you look at this team, but the number 9 position is definitely one of it now that they sold June Intl to the Colorado Rapids, and they've been desperately looking for a replacement, which now they of course have. Now, moving on in terms of the next news, and speaking of Atlanta United, they have signed both Mexican defender Juan Jose Peretta and Mexican international goalkeeper Raul Guedino during this past week. And these are 2 players that I've mentioned, I think, in the last News of the Week episode, that there was a rumor that Atlanta was going to get both of these players, and indeed that is the case. And also, I think it's unsurprising that Atlanta United has really kind of gone into the Liga MX market, because that guy that is coaching for Atlanta United in Gonzalo Pineda, yeah, he has a lot of connection in terms of those Liga MX team, especially in Chivas. And yeah, it's unsurprising that some of these players, especially the goalkeeper that they got, Raul Guedino, he was, I think he was a starter for Chivas as the goalkeeper for that team. And that, I don't know how much, I think that also is just a loan, but something tells me that this could be a permanent signing, knowing the fact that, I know the goalkeeping situation for Atlanta is kind of interesting, because, you have Brad Guzan who is out for the season, but there's a question whether or not if he is going to be returning once he recovers from the injury, because he is definitely getting up to the age. And also, it feels like it's kind of time for Atlanta United to maybe find themselves a future goalkeeper that will anchor the team throughout these next couple of years. And Raul, from what I heard, he's been with the Mexican national team before. Make five appearances and made a bunch of appearances for Chivas, knowing he is kind of like the starter for the team. So yeah, I think overall you can clearly see that I've said last week that Atlanta clearly needs some depth, and in some way getting Juan Jose Pereda, I think most likely that's kind of the depth. But in terms of the goalkeeping situation, from what I've heard from Atlanta fans, is that they think that he's going to be the future goalkeeper and the guy that's going to be replacing Brad Guzan, and we'll see whether or not that is going to be the case. And I also won't be surprised he's going to thrust into action straight away, because there really isn't a lot of good goalkeeping option for Atlanta United. I mean, they have Bobby Shuttleworth and Rocco Rios Novos, and both of these goalkeepers aren't really kind of like MLS quality goalkeepers that they want to start game in and game out. Now, moving on in terms of the next news, the Colorado Rapids have re-signed Scottish winger Sam Nicholson, and it's always great to see Sam Nicholson back in MLS. He definitely was one of my favorite players when he was with Minnesota United, and still one of the few MLS play, or one of the few Minnesota player that play on that expansion team that is still playing in the league right now. But this is clearly just a depth signing for the Rapids, and I think Nicholson, during his time when he went to the Rapids, he had some good moments, and that I think the Rapids are kind of thinking that let's just actually sign him permanently, and it seems like they're going to give him a 2.5 year contract after they agreed to re-sign him and bring him back to the Colorado Rapids. Now, one player that is not coming to MLS is Mario Goodza. Now, this has been a big rumor that's been surrounding the MLS news cycle for the past week too, where it was rumored that maybe Inter Miami is going to get Mario Goodza, but it seems like that's not going to happen anymore, because it seems like Mario Goodza has reached an agreement to join with Eintracht Frankfurt after spending these past season with PSV Eindhoven. And I think overall for Inter Miami, I think this is the right move for them to not go after Mario Goodza, because from what I know about Mario Goodza is that he's been kind of heading toward the downward trend, and he's also having a lot of injuries concern, and that's kind of the last thing that Inter Miami really needs to do. Where one of the things that I think Inter Miami are moving on from it is that they just simply don't want to sign any of these kind of European superstar kind of player that is kind of near the twilight of their career. And while Goodza is not really quite at that part. I mean, he's only 30 years old. He's kind of in the career path that he is right now. He's kind of in the wrong end of 30 right now, and that I think for Inter Miami it wouldn't make sense, especially with this new front office, and what Chris Henderson wants to do with this Inter Miami team is try not to do what the previous regime done, with bring all these kind of big European star that will get butts in the seat. But it hasn't really worked out. And speaking of getting butts in the seats, I mean, most of the Inter Miami games I've seen at Drive Pink Stadium has been pretty much half empty. So it is safe to say that method in terms of getting these well-known players to your team and to get butts in your seat, it doesn't always work out. In fact, more time or not, it hasn't worked out, because nowadays in MLS, I've said it many times before, we're now in the era of MLS where it's 3.0 and soon to be 4.0, where we're not going to have teams anymore just decide to sign these well-known kind of player in Euro. I mean, occasionally you'll still see it, and occasionally you'll still get those Euro snub that's called MLS a retirement league. But when you look at what the league is heading in the direction right now, and look at all the teams and how they decide to build their team, it's all about getting these young South American players, hopefully develop them and sell them for a profit, or getting these kind of hidden gem player all around the world to anchor in their team. And that you don't see what we saw like just maybe 5 or 10 years ago, where that was the period where we really saw a lot of these big name European player coming to MLS, and hence that's why MLS has always been labeled as a retirement league, because of that. Now, there's a report suggests that Quakes defender Francisco Calvo could be departing this summer and joining Turkish club Konyaspor. I think that's how you pronounce it. I'm not the best in terms of pronouncing Turkish club name, unless it come from the big three of the Turkish league. But this is kind of a rumor that I have mixed opinions about it, and I think the Quakes fan base has mixed opinion about this, because on one hand, I haven't been critical with Francisco Calvo. I've said before how I wasn't that happy when he signed with the Quakes, because I know that feeling when he was with Minnesota United and how bad he was. Well, I wouldn't say he was bad, but the fact that he didn't really help that defense whatsoever, and that he was actually signed on a DP contract, which is one of the many mistake DP signing that Minnesota United has done throughout their short tenure in MLS. But when he comes to the Quakes, I was kind of worried that that's not going to help our defense whatsoever. And so far, when you saw how he's playing this season, there's been multiple times that I've been right about how he's been wrecking havoc on our defense, and he's kind of almost like a very Mateus Almeida kind of type of player, where he doesn't really just play center back. He goes everywhere. He sometimes be out of possession, and while that kind of does help the attack a little bit, more times or not, he has left our defender exposed because he's been out of position so many times, and that I think it's kind of cut loose to him. But then at the same time, the other Quakes fan base, and in my opinion, I think maybe I feel like I'm being a little bit too critical, and especially there's been times that he has been able to contribute on the attacking front, and that I feel like in the last game when he was not there with the Quakes, and even in the previous game against Nashville, you can see that this attack definitely isn't as potent as we've seen in the past couple of games, and that it feels like he's been a very good kind of attacking outlet, and a guy that can really start a good build up for this team. So again, it's kind of a weird feeling, the fact that I have like mixed opinion about this, because in the beginning of the season, if I had heard this rumor, I would absolutely love the fact that he can be leaving with the Quakes, and I think it was a huge mistake in the first place signing him to this team. But we'll see whether or not if that this signing is going to be, and there's no doubt that this is a team that is once again going for a rebuild, and once again trying to reshape the defense, and that I think Francesco Calvo definitely is not going to be the answer in terms of trying to reshape this back line that the Quakes are currently undergoing right now. Now, there is several MLS team is interest in signing former Red Bulls attacker Fabio, and I've said before, I've always been a big fan of Fabio, and that I kind of don't understand why the Red Bulls decided to let him go. Well, actually, they let him go because he was only on loan for the Red Bulls, and it feels like the team that was asking the Red Bulls to pay the permanent price was a little bit too steep, and therefore the Red Bulls decided to not sign him on a permanent deal. But right now it seems like there's a lot of MLS team that is interested in this. And again, he's been a guy that, when he came into the league, he really performed well for the Red Bulls, and that at the early days of him with the Red Bulls, he was actually leading the league in terms of an assist, even though he's more kind of a prototype kind of number 10 and number 9 player that can score goals for the team rather than just being a playmaker. But feels like that's what the Red Bulls were using him as a way. But we'll see whether or not if any team is going to try to bring him back, and whether or not if these teams that are going to bring him back, is it going to be a loan deal, or is it going to be a permanent signing? Now, the Vancouver Whitecaps is interest in 22-year-old center back Juan Luis Perez from Deportivo San Carlos, and I believe that's the same team that play NYCFC in the CONCACAF Champions League, and it had that two-legged affair was not close whatsoever. So, this is kind of interesting, but I guess, this is maybe just a signing for the Whitecaps to kind of get some depth in the back line. I mean, their back line is for the most part this season has been pretty stable, even though there's been some bad moment for this team at point. But I think this is just a signing, not only to get another player that they might have seen in CCL that they feel like that they've been very impressive, but also knowing that he's only 22-year-old, he definitely has a long way to go in his career, and maybe this is just one of those signing for MLS teams to trying to get these young players either in Central America or South America, develop them, and hopefully they sell them off to somewhere else in the future. Now, former FC Dallas fullback Brian Reynolds is going to join KVC Westerlo on loan, and I can't believe the fact that I'm actually mentioning KVC Westerlo for the second consecutive news of the week episode. I mean, before I even mentioned the fact that I've never heard of this club, but this time I did do some research in terms of finding out who they actually is, and it turns out they actually just got promoted to the Belgium top flight. So yeah, this is a team that I guess now it's been a little bit more well known now that they're in the top flight of the Belgian league. But we heard about I think last week, who was it? Oh, Griffin Yao was the one that was linked with KBC Westello, and we still don't know whether that is going to happen. But one thing we will know is that Brian Reynolds is going to go there. And again, for Brian Reynolds, yeah, his time in Europe has been kind of turbulent lately. Ever since he made that big money move, or that European move to go to AS Roma, it has not worked out for him, and he's been linked with so many teams in terms of going on loan, or Roma decide to sell him off outright. And let's just hope that he can eventually settle his feet in Europe, or if it doesn't work out, just come back to MLS. Because we talked about before, when he decided to go to Roma, this was a guy that was considered to be a future U.S. men's national team fullback, and that just have not worked out so far for him. And yeah, like I said, joining a team that is kind of a little bit unknown, and the team that just got promoted in the Belgian top flight, I'm not sure that's kind of the best idea. But he's only joining them there on loan, and if he actually turns out to do well, maybe he will get a chance to get some minutes to play with AS Roma. Because again, from what I've heard, is that ever since he's joined with Roma, he has not got a lot of minutes for that team. And this is also where this is why I've always said, with a lot of these MLS players decide to move overseas, don't join a team that is considered, well, I wouldn't say Roma is a giant in Serie A, though they did win their first European trophy in the Conference League this season. But you want to join a team that is well known in terms of developing young players, and I don't think Roma is one of those teams. And this is also why that when Brendan Aronson decided to go to RB Salzburg, that was a great choice, because Salzburg not only have former Red Bulls player Jesse Marsh, and that Jesse Marsh and Brendan Aronson seems to have a good relationship with each other, which is why he's now going to be going to Leeds and following in where Jesse Marsh is going to be coaching right now. But you also want to join a team that is well known to develop young players, and KVC Westello is definitely not one of those places that I've heard. Now, some good news for Whitecaps fan, as Thomas Hassel is set to return to the first team this upcoming week, after returning to full first team training this week. And that, this is definitely good news, as I mentioned, the fact that while Cody Cropper did his best in terms of come into relief for the injured Thomas Hassel, it's pretty clear that the Whitecaps fan want their number one goalkeeper back in, and then they're also hoping that he can stay healthy for a long term. Because one thing that I think, besides what I mentioned, the concern of whether or not if Thomas Hassel is ready to be in the spotlight right away after they decide to move on from Maxime Crépeau, but there's also that concern of injuries, of the fact that he's been suffering a lot of injuries in these last 2 years, ever since he really made his spotlight in that MLS is back tournament. But we'll see whether or not if he can stay healthy for the full term. And it's definitely vital for him to stay healthy too, because he definitely has a potential to be a decent goalkeeper. And one thing you do not want to do when you're a young goalkeeper, or if you're a young player in general, is suffer so many injuries that can really ruin your potential. Now, unfortunately, bad news for Austin FC, as it was announced this week that their midfielder Georgian Valencia is going to be undergoing knee surgery. Well, it's not really kind of bad news. I mean, I think Austin fans knew that this was going to happen, and that I think this is just kind of a news that confirmed that, yeah, he indeed is going to be done for the season. But on a little better news, if you're a Red Bulls fan, is that they've seen one of their playmaker, Luquinhas, has been able to win Player of the Week. Well, I wouldn't say just a playmaker, but just a banger of a goal scored in Luquinhas, because it feels like he has really developed that Hassani Dotson kind of trait, where he only scored bangers only, and that he did it again in the last game when the Red Bulls play against Toronto FC, and well, he deserved to win Player of the Week. But now moving on to talk about news that is not really kind of related to MLS, but certainly some interesting news, is that the U.S. men's national team announced that they will face Japan and Saudi Arabia in September, and they're going to be playing that game against Japan over in Germany, while they didn't mention where exactly they're going to be playing the game against Saudi Arabia. But yeah, this was kind of interesting, but also kind of a disappointing news, because yes, I get that there was rumor that the U.S. is going to be playing their friendlies in Europe, but I feel like, you know, they should have done what they've done in the past. I mean, I remember back in 2014 when they were going to the World Cup in Brazil, they had that kind of send-off series, and I wonder if the U.S. are going to do something similar this time. They're going to have like a send-off series, most likely during the October international break. But you know, I feel like if they're going to do kind of like a send-off series, which maybe this is kind of the one, why not play in the U.S.? Like, you know, I would definitely would like to see these matchup in the U.S. and that it kind of doesn't help that if these games are in Europe, because who's going to attend these games? Is these games going to just play behind closed door, or is there going to be attending it? And is the people in Germany going to be interested to see the U.S. play against Japan? I mean, yeah, I think this is kind of a weird one, and that this is also one that I really hope that they should have just played this in the U.S. because I guarantee if you play the U.S. against Japan, and you know, if you do select a location that maybe, I mean, I know some would say they should not select a location that is kind of like near the Asian market, like in the West Coast, but I feel like they should just because, you know, a lot of Asian fans been want this to see their team play in the U.S. for a very long time, and we just haven't got that, because there's been most of the time when the U.S. play friendlies, it's either against a European opponent or facing against a South American opponent. But at least the good thing about these two opponents, both of these opponents is going to be in the World Cup, so these are now two other opponents that the U.S. are going to be testing against to see how they can do against teams that is almost in the same tier that is going to be going to the World Cup in Qatar. But finally, the last news of this news of the week also involved the World Cup, but in 2026, where it was announced that BMO Field is expected to add 17,756 seats to raise the capacity to 45,736 to prepare for the World Cup in 2026. And again, this shouldn't be a big surprise, because I've mentioned before that they have plans in terms of expanding that stadium. And when you also look at how BMO Field is built, especially after they remodeled it a couple of years ago, it is built to raise the capacity and set to expand it if the World Cup is going to come to Canada. And it seems like lo and behold, that seems like it is going to happen in 2026, and that now they have a much easier time in terms of expanding the stadium. Because, you know, I think one of the good thing about this upcoming World Cup after the one in Qatar is that all the stadium that is going to be playing in the World Cup aren't really just newly built stadium. I mean, usually when we talk about the World Cup, you see countries that had to kind of build their stadium from scratch or kind of remodel it. That's the beauty of the U.S., where, you know, none of these stadiums really need to be remodeled, because they're already existing site that is considered some of the best stadium in the world, and in some cases, some of these venue are probably the best in the world right now. So yeah, that's the good thing about this upcoming World Cup, though. You know, in the case of BMO Field, they do still have to raise the capacity, because I think it's like 40,000. That's the minimum capacity to host a FIFA World Cup game. And again, BMO Field, it feels like the organizer, when they remodeled this stadium a couple of years ago, had that mindset that they are going to have to expand it even more to host World Cup game. And it's good the fact that they now all that effort that they thought that it's going to happen is finally going to happen. Now, it's also going to be interesting to see what happens once the World Cup is over. Are they going to remove those seating? I'm assuming it's most likely going to be the case, because I mean, I don't think for a stadium like that, like 45,000, I don't think Toronto FC is going to fill that game in and game out. I mean, they do. TFC has averaged good attendance. I mean, these last couple of games they've been averaged like 26,000 almost every game, but 45,000 is just way too much, and I'm expecting they're going to get rid of those temporary seating once the World Cup is over in 2026. But either way, hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you do, make sure you guys leave a like, smash the subscribe button. Let me know in the comments below what do you think of all these news. And yeah, hope you guys enjoyed this video. And oh, also, if there's any news I didn't mention here on the board, let me know in the comments below. But yeah, until then, hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I will see you guys next time.